want to thank you guys for coming. I'm sure some of you have had a long day. We'll just give it a few more minutes for others to jump on and then we'll get started. All right. So I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to go ahead and get started. The first little bit of this training will be going over the duties of a nominating committee and your role as a parliamentarian in that. So the biggest thing to know is that a parliamentarian does not have to be on the nominating committee, but a parliamentarian does have to be at the first meeting because you need to read them their instructions. And once you've done that, then you can leave the meeting. But if you have been elected to be on the nominating committee, then you would stay. The parliamentarian does not have to be the chair of the nominating committee. The nominating committee elects their own chair. So I don't want you to feel that that is a pressure that you have to be the chair of the nominating committee, because you don't. And you can definitely be part of that nominating committee. So hopefully you guys have been working on getting the nominating committee together. This is the one and only committee that your president should not be any part of. Should not be, it cannot be on it. You, of course, if your nominating committee decides to maybe ask the current president if they want to serve a second term, then of course you reach out to them and talk to them and see if they're willing to do that. But other than that, you try and keep your president as far away from it as possible for, ethical reasons and, just all of that stuff. You just want to, because the nominating committee are the people that nominate folks for next year's, the 24-25 school year. So the first thing is I want to make sure that you guys know where you can find in your bylaws. It's under the heading officers and their elections. So I believe it's page 4 or 5. But anyway, so officers and their elections explains to you how the nominating committee is set up, and then how they cannot serve more. They cannot serve 2 consecutive years on the nominating committee and all of that stuff. So that's all there. And then if you go to the first page of the standing rules, then it lists who your VPs are. So, and it says how many VPs should be there. A president, it should say whether or not your unit has a executive vice president. Some units do, some units don't. In officers and their under the officers and their election section, it will also tell you whether or not your corresponding secretary and your parliamentarian are either elected or appointed. So that will be important as well to put on your to let your nominating committee know. So the nominating committee is only supposed to select folks in the elected positions. They do not find chair people. They only find folks for the elected positions. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Okay, great. So as a parliamentarian, you will be at the first meeting, and these are the instructions that you will give your nominating committee. I will be sending you all a packet that has a straw ballot. A straw ballot is a form that you can send out to get nominations from people or get ideas of people that might be good on the board for the nominating committee to consider. A straw ballot is not a for sure this person needs to be on the board. These are just names to consider. The packet will also contain instructions, and it will also contain the report of the nominating committee. The report of the nominating committee is also called the slate of officers. They're one and the same. That particular piece of paper is where you will write down the folks that have committed to being on the slate. And then that particular piece of paper needs to be posted 28 days prior to your election meeting. Most everybody's election meeting is in February. There's a few that are in March, and I believe there's a couple that are in May. But that report needs to be posted 28 days prior. And when I say posted, that means sent out in an e-blast, put up on a bulletin board, an outdoor bulletin board, put on Facebook pages. Just get that nominating committee report out to everybody, so that everybody knows that when your election meeting is and what and who will be on the slate. So one other important thing that I just told membership chairs that joined my membership training is that your membership chairs need to be keeping up a current membership list, because anybody that is nominated to be on the board needs to be a member in good standing. So that membership list will help the nominating committee make sure that those folks are members. So let's see if I went over things. So a list of the current board members, a contact sheet for the committee members so that you can communicate. Usually what I like to let the committee know is usually it's like a 1 hour, an hour and a half meeting in person to kind of decide, okay, I'm going to call this person, and this person for president. I'm going to call this person and this person for secretary. Diane, you're going to call this person and this person for membership. So those are, and then once you start dividing and conquering and getting people, then you can email amongst. So they can do that. We in the packet will be job descriptions from CAPTA on what is all involved in those jobs. I think that is incredibly important to make sure that your nominating committee is upfront and honest about the time commitment, about what meetings they need to attend. We'd rather they didn't say, oh, just be president, we'll help you, because that usually doesn't work out the way that the person thinks it'll work out. We've seen many officers get fried because they didn't necessarily realize everything that was involved. So we want to make sure that the nominating committee is upfront and honest about. Sometimes officer responsibilities are different from unit to unit. So if you were the membership chair at one unit, it might be way different at a high school unit or, something like that. So we just need to make sure that job descriptions are fairly accurate and honest. Some a lot of your units, a lot of your bylaws in the back where the standing rules are. Some units have specific standing rules for their school only. So there's like three types of standing rules that are in your bylaws right now. So there's general standing rules, there's 33rd district standing rules, and there's Torrance Council standing rules, and then your school standing rules, which are very specific, like the coffee pot is kept in the blue locked cabinet. That's where it should always be kept. The hospitality VP will be the one that is in charge of the key. So that hospitality VP needs to know that they're supposed to be in charge of the key and where to get the key. So it gets into very specific details. And if you don't have standing rules and want to add standing rules, you can reach out to me and we can discuss that. Let's see. So we talked about the straw ballots, and those can be sent out once your nominating committee starts work. You can send that out, and then they will come back to the chair or the parliamentarian, either one, and then they can be just sent to the nominating committee so that they can take a look at them. You need to discuss with your nominating committee the confidentiality, because you're going to have very frank discussions, and you should be having very frank discussions, because if somebody in that role is not working out, you need to, and it's hard, I know, because I've been there and done that, but you need to make a decision on whether or not it's good for the PTA, if it's a good fit, because you want to have a successful PTA. But you need to be able to feel confident enough just to speak freely and talk about the qualifications of a candidate. If somebody on your nominating committee is someone you want to consider, you can ask them to leave the room and you guys can have the frank discussion, and then you can ask them to come back in and then then ask the question. That happens a lot. Because if they're volunteering for the nominating committee, they're volunteers that want to be part of the PTA. So choosing a candidate, only one nominee should be chosen per office, only one office per person. You cannot serve in the office for more than 2 terms. You can serve in a different role in a different office, but you cannot serve as the membership, the VPs or the president or the executive vice president more than 2 terms. A lot of this stuff is in your bylaws, so make sure to look those over. Make sure that you consider balancing your board, that it represents your parent and student community. That's very important. So the candidates must be PTA members for 30 days before nomination. So you know that your slate needs to be posted for 28 days. If you have asked somebody, say from an elementary school and you're a middle school, tell them to join PTA right away at the middle school. That way it'll fulfill their 30 days before the election. Let's see. Financial officers, president, and check signers must not be related by blood or marriage or reside in the same household. And they cannot serve on council in the same position as their unit board. So if you're, so for me, I'm the membership, or I'm the parliamentarian for Torrance Council. I could not be parliamentarian, say at Jefferson. I would have to be a different position. A person can only be president at one association at a time. Can't even imagine being a president at two associations at the same time. Contacting candidates for consent. You can contact during the meeting. So if you want to start calling people while you're all sitting there, you can do that. And see if they're willing to say yes. If try not to get two people asking the same people. Does that make sense? It's because one might say, I'm thinking about it, but then the next one will say yes, and then you've got an issue. So you have to be very deliberate on how you reach out to people and organized. So so that two different people are not asked for the same position, because feelings get hurt. So the chairman contacts any nominees that were called to let them know the committee's decision. So at the end, if you've got the slate filled, you just want to do that due diligence and call and let them know that, and just make sure that one last time that they're okay to be on the committee. Ask them to attend the election meeting, complete the nominating committee report. You do have to get signatures on that report, and then submit the report 28 days before the election. And make sure that the president knows so that they can help to post. So that's pretty much straightforward what the nominating committee will do. Like I said, probably the end of the week or early next week, I will send out the instructions and things that need to be gotten, like the membership list and all of those things. So, but I will send an email out kind of explaining all of this. So does anybody have any questions on this particular piece? You can just speak up if you'd like. All right. I guess we can open it up to just any questions that you guys might have. Nobody? So let me go ahead and ask this then, because I always like to make sure that I am improving the way that I support folks being on Torrance Council PTA. So is there anything that I can do better, or so any ways that I can support you guys better? Because sometimes the parliamentarian role can sound overwhelming, but may not be as overwhelming as you thought it was, or vice versa. You and the president should be working together to make sure that your meetings are moving along. If you see things are going down a rabbit trail, it's your job to help get those folks back onto the agenda. And, we shouldn't be discussing, what color balloons we should have at the dance on, 2 months from now. We need to be, back discussing and making sure that that stuff on the agenda is getting done and votes are being taken properly. That is the main role at a meeting for the parliament. I think there's 5 units that will be needing to update their bylaws in 2024. So it's not immediate. but it is something that a bylaws committee will need to be formed, and that bylaws committee goes over the bylaws, sees if there's anything that needs to be changed. It's done on a line. It's super simple, and fairly quick and easy to get done. If you want to add standing rules, that is a little bit more of a chore, but I think in some cases, my understanding is, because I'm in transition as well, that some folks' bylaws, when we transitioned from hard copy bylaws to online bylaws, somehow standing rules fell off. So if you don't have standing rules, we can look and see if you did a few years ago, and then we can go through the process of adding them back. And then you'll be good. So anybody have any questions? This might be short and sweet.
This is my first year,
Uh-huh.
so I really have no clue what I'm doing, nor
Okay.
have any idea what you just went over, to be perfectly honest. What exactly is the role of this position? I mean,
Okay.
I've kind of been told like you sit in meetings and keep them in line, and that's all I know.
You should read your bylaws front to back
Okay.
and know them
Um,
as best you
okay.
can. You should at least know the quorum number for an executive board meeting and the association meeting. So how many people can be there for you to conduct business? So that is one of your roles. When you're at a meeting, you have everybody sign in. Sometimes the secretary does the sign-in sheet. Sometimes the parliamentarian does the sign-in sheet. So you can ask your president how they do that. And then you just make sure that everybody that's there meets that quorum. So some people have 8 for executive board. So executive board is the elected board, the principal, the teacher rep, and any standing committee chair. So there's a difference between a committee and a standing committee. And the standing committees are listed in your bylaws. I believe they're in your standing rules now. It'll tell you if you have standing committee. Some people do, some people don't. But what a standing committee is a committee that is in place all year. So like membership, safety, trying to think of others. Hospitality. So, but you don't want to add a bunch of standing committees, because then that changes the formula that you come up with for your quorum. And that's a whole thing that's done in the bylaws. So I don't want to get deep into the weeds on that one. But the biggest thing is that you should just take a look at your bylaws, because that's how your unit is supposed to be run. In the back, at the end of your bylaws, there is your EIN number for tax exempt status, your California state ID number, your national PTA number, your all the important numbers. So you want to be very careful and not post your bylaws on a website or anything like that. If you do, you should redact the numbers and signatures and things like that, but we would rather you didn't do that. If somebody asks to take a look at the bylaws, you should have a copy available for them to look at, but they look at it in the room and then give it back to you, if that makes sense. Everybody on your board you can park a copy. Like if you have a Google domain or if you have a shared drive, you can park a copy of your bylaws in the shared drive, and then your board will have access to it there instead of running copies, because they're several pages long. That is a really good way to give your board access to the bylaws. But it's a very important document, and that's the main one of the main roles of a parliamentarian is to have a good working knowledge of. It's hard to read because it's a lot of lingo, but it does have all the answers to a lot of questions that people do ask. So what I was talking about today early on was the nominating committee. And what the nominating committee does is goes out and recruits folks to be on the board for next year. And so they're the ones that make phone calls. They're the ones that sit down and discuss, oh, I think this person would be a really good president. She's a first grade mom. She's going to be here for a long period of time because she's got 5 other kiddos coming up behind this one. And, and you have those kinds of discussions. The parliamentarian can either be on the nominating committee or just has to be at the first meeting to read those instructions. So just depending, on, but another thing that you do at the meetings is just to, like if the vote gets started, so say the treasurer says, I move to approve the treasurer's report for the months May through June. Well, they wouldn't do that anyway. Okay, so the treasurer gives the treasurer's report and says, I move to ratify checks number blah, blah, blah to 400. Then the president will say, is there a second? And somebody seconds it. And then the president will say, is there any discussion? And sometimes this is where things go off the rails because there might be somebody that has a discussion. And if you see the discussion just rehashing stuff, then you need to butt in and just say, hey guys, we need to finish the vote. And then the president says, all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion carries or motion is denied. You, as a parliamentarian, need to make sure that that is happening on votes. Not everything gets voted on. So, and I have some really great handouts that can help you know the correct wording because some things get approved, some things get appointed, some things get ratified. So I have a good sheet that I can send out to the parliamentarians to help in that. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. The bylaws, revising the bylaws and that kind of stuff. I'll be emailing directly those 5 units that will have to do their bylaws, and that's a step-by-step walkthrough as well. So, is there any other questions? Nicole, if you want to, you can reach out to me anytime. I'm the person to reach out to. Your unit has a mentor from Torrance Council of PTAs as well. But if it's specifically parliamentarian, you can reach out to me at Parliamentarian. Yeah, it's Parliamentarian at torrancecouncilptas.org.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, so, and I'm a night owl. I answer pretty quickly. So yeah, you can ask me anything. I've done a lot of the roles already because I had 3 kids go through. Some stuff is older because I've been in PTA for 22 years, so it's a little different. But if I don't have the answer, I will definitely find it and get it to you guys. So,
Hi,
yeah.
this is Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, I just was wondering, I came a little late, but I was wondering, would you be sending us all the documents that you were showing through email to us?
Yes, I will.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it'll probably be the end of the week or early next week because I know that a few schools needed to get their nominating committees elected at an association meeting. right away because they don't have as many association meetings as others. So that is one thing I need to make clear, is that your nominating committee needs to be elected at an association meeting. And that association meeting needs to be 60 days prior to your election meeting. And all of that, the election meeting is in your bylaws. And then you just count back 60 days, figure out what association meeting it needs to be done at, and get them elected. That's just the association, or that is just the nominating committee. That is not the board for 24-25. That's just the committee to select. And they have to be elected at an association meeting. So the difference, executive board is the elected members, like I said before. The association is all members. So anybody that joins PTA is part of your association. So some schools have 3 association meetings in the year, some have 4, some have more. So you just have to look at your bylaws, see when you're there. There's section for executive board and there's a section for association. Read those. It'll tell you what the quorum is. It'll tell you when they're supposed to meet. If it doesn't tell you there, it'll tell you in the standing rules. Nicole, if we could even get together and just have a Zoom meeting like this and just go through your pages if you have any questions of your bylaws. So I don't know if you got a current set of your bylaws. A lot of them were done in 2020. So take a look and see, and I'll take a look and see if I've got them for you, and we can go from there, but we can talk offline about that. All righty. Is there anyone else with any questions?
Can I ask a question about
Yeah,
the meeting, keeping track of the sign-ins for who's there? Is that something that should be done every meeting for every PTA, or some schools might not?
It's
ours has never done that. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, because in your minutes, those that attended need to be there.
Okay,
in the minutes.
I know the recording secretary does keep track of it and write their names in the meeting minutes, but we don't sign in. So are we supposed to be signing in?
It is not required. I know that the units that I have been a part of, they just do a simple sign-in sheet, because the recording secretary sometimes gets overwhelmed and can't remember who was there, and that just makes it easier. So that's an option.
Just as long as it's being tracked is what's important.
Yes, at the executive board. It's pretty near impossible to do it in an association meeting because they're usually connected to a concert or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And we will probably have another training closer to election time. But the one thing that I do want to reiterate that we have had problems for is just making sure that you're keeping on top of the dates and keeping on top of getting things turned in and getting things posted. Because elections have been thrown out because things were not done properly, and then you have to do it all over again, and it can be a nightmare. So making sure that nominees are 30 days, a member for 30 days, just being upfront and honest about the time commitment for those roles and what those roles are. And I think that's it for now for Q&A. Like I said, by closer to elections, we'll have another similar to this or in person, just depending on how my illness goes. So, is there be anything else? All right. My husband's going to be happy. He can have the TV to watch football. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you're not getting emails, I've sent a few out. If you're not getting them, let me know that as well. But since you guys are here, you hopefully got the flyers and the reminders. All right, then we'll call it a night, you guys. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.